At Masada, a fortress built by King Herod, atop a butte overlooking the sea, one rebel group was still holding out against Rome. They were the Sicarii, who were named after the long, thin daggers they carried. At the beginning of the rebellion, they had taken the fortress in a surprise attack. Herod had designed Masada so that a small force could hold it against an enormous army. The historian Josephus described the trail that was the only way to reach the top.
This trail was called the snake, as resembling that animal in its narrowness and its windings. There is also nothing but destruction in case your feet slip, for on each side there is a deep chasm.
Because the snake was so narrow, a handful of Sicarii had for years been able to beat back every attack by Rome's legions. But then the Romans began to build a ramp that would enable them to reach the top of Masada. For 2 years, the Romans built their ramp. And for 2 years, the Sicarii waited. On the day before the ramp was completed, the leader of the Sicarii, Eleazar ben Yair, told his men they faced an awful choice. If they surrendered, the Romans would crucify them as an example to the would-be rebels throughout their empire. Or they could die fighting and leave their wives and children to rape and slavery. Then he proposed a third alternative. Josephus learned what took place from 2 women who managed to slip away from the fortress.
To avoid the miseries that were to follow from their enemies, they resolved on the necessity of doing their own execution. Miserable men indeed were they whose distress forced them to slay their own wives and children with their own hands. The husbands tenderly embraced their wives and took their children into their arms and gave the longest parting kisses to them with tears in their eyes. Yet at the same time, they did complete that which they had resolved on. Not able to bear the grief they were under for what they had done, and esteeming it an injury to those they had killed to live even the shortest piece of time after them, they then chose 10 men by lot to slay all the rest. And they offered their necks to the stroke of those who executed that melancholy office. And when these 10 men had without fear killed them all, they made the same rule for casting lots for themselves, that he whose lot it was should first kill the other 9, and after all should kill himself. Now, for the Romans, they expected that they should be fought in the morning. But when they made their assault upon the fortress, they saw no enemy, but a terrible solitude on every side.